Guys, after looking at news and the situation, I am more certain now that we're going to have an extended bull run and that we are at least getting to 150,000, if not 200,000 this time. And the next bear market, if it happens, it won't be quite nearly as bad. And I'm going to tell you why in this video. And we're going to start with certain amounts of news here. And if you look at this, Bitcoin is going to attract $1 trillion from institutions in the raging bull market. Now, you might think, whoa, $1 trillion? Getting too carried away here. But not so much if you really look at it. Like, how much is in pension funds, how much is in hedge funds, and how much are in the other huge funds in today's market. $1 trillion is actually like not a huge percentage of those funds in that market. But compared to how much is actually in the ETFs right now, it is a large amount. So far, in the 2 months that the ETFs have been active, essentially they've only gotten about $12 billion in them. $1 trillion is nearly 100 times more, roughly 90 times more, basically. So, unless you want to guess that the bull run is going to last 180 months, which would honestly be about 15, 16 years, which is probably not going to happen, obviously, the buying has to be more concentrated if it's going to be concentrated into like a 3-year run. And a 3-year run would still be an extended cycle because the current cycle and the peak is basically scheduled to end sometime during next year. But now, because of this buying of the ETFs, it could definitely be into 2026 and much longer. And a lot of these analysts are saying, you got to look at the long game, whereas the media has been basically salivating at any little pump and basically dreading any little dump. You have to realize how much $1 trillion is. There's only 1% of the buying that's been down and 99% to go. Now, people have been saying we're going to get $150 billion worth of ETFs within the next 3 years. But now analysts are saying we way underestimated that because the Bitcoin ETF is the most successful ETF launched in the last forever, basically. No ETF has risen so much in so little time. And the greatest part isn't even there yet, because if we kept on accumulating at this rate, it would roughly take 15, 16 years for us to accumulate that $1 trillion. And on that timeline, then inflation has to come into it. But right now, what a lot of the people are saying is the big funds and the big hedge funds, the big pension funds, and other big bank funds are still in the process of doing their paperwork. And these are industry insiders that are saying this. So they do know what they're talking about. And it's true. Whenever like a new fund or asset class comes out, the big funds are the last to get in because, like the rich individual investors, they don't have to really worry about the regulations of whether they can hold an asset or not. As long as an asset is there, they can hold that asset. However, the big rich funds, they have a lot of bureaucracy to go through, a lot of paperwork to fill out. And if you actually look at gold, after the ETF came out, it was a while before gold really shot up. Now for Bitcoin, I believe it's going to be faster because, communications has gotten a lot faster. Everything's electronic, so it won't take as much time. But a few months is actually very little for them to go through all the bureaucratic paperwork and meet all the regulations because this is a new asset class that they want to get into. Many people are saying Q3, Q4 is when the big institutions are going to start coming in. But even to cram it all into majority 3 years, they would have to have like 5 or 6x the buying power that the current ETF purchasers are going to have. And that just goes to show you like how much of a bull run we're going to have this time. Now, I do believe it is possible that we actually push the price of Bitcoin up to 200 grand because think about it, just with the $12 billion so far, we've actually pushed up from the dip of 38K to over 70K. Now it's sitting around 70K right now. Imagine what several months or possibly a year or two of 5 times that volume net inflow constantly, basically on a daily basis will do. I think breaking 100K is almost a guarantee. 150K I think is very reachable, even 200K. And that probably does not include calculating the sovereign funds that might want to come in. I think we will for sure break 200K if a large amount of sovereign funds come in, but we might be sitting around 150, 200K if they don't come in. And you're asking like $1 trillion, it's a lot of money. But if you look at all the big funds of the world, quote, a 1% allocation across the board of all the big funds would mean 1 trillion of inflows into the space. Against this, 12 billion is barely a down payment. And that should actually resonate in everyone's head that's a crypto investor. You know how much money is in the stock market? The stock market's worth about $100 trillion, I believe. Now, the stock market's a lot more diversified. It's not more diluted. There's not like one stock that essentially represents 50% of the market like Bitcoin. But remember, crypto is a very, very young market, so it's still concentrated in 1 or 2 coins. Eventually, that will diversify out, and there will be other ETFs as well. But Bitcoin is going to represent a lot of that, at least in the beginning. And in the next couple of years, I don't see huge amounts of altcoin ETFs popping up, and Bitcoin will dominate. So you're going to get probably 2 or 3 years where the buy volume, as soon as we get into like the second half of this year, or maybe like the fourth quarter of this year, where the buy volume per day and the net inflow per day is going to be 4 or 5 times what it is now. And even though not every day will be positive, because there will obviously be dips when people take profits, overall, we're going to get a very, very steady march up the ladder as the $1 trillion fills in. Now, if you just want to buy Bitcoin, I understand that is a very safe investment. I think it'll get you an ROI that far outperforms your banking interest or any kind of like CD or anything. But obviously, I think some of the altcoins are going to rise more along with the Bitcoin rise, because that'll get a lot of those retail buyers in. We might get a situation where Bitcoin is kind of like on a consistent rise and altcoins go through the same cycle. Although because Bitcoin is high, altcoins probably won't dip as much in the bear market. And when we hit that bear market season, remember how much pressure on the buying side this is going to have. Even if you concentrate 4 or 5x the buys for 3 years, which would already be an extended cycle, you still have pretty much half the $1 trillion that needs to be bought. And they're not going to stop buying in the bear market. So when you drop that 30, 40, 50%, these institutions are going to look greedily at that dip, and they're going to want to buy it up for sure. So I think there is a very higher floor for Bitcoin, even when we have that bear market. So everything does tend to look our way right now. If you're still waiting for 20K to buy in, that is not going to happen. All your TA saying it has to retrace to 30, 40K, not valid at this point with all these institutions buying in, because not only do we have the huge amount of buys and demands right now, we have far more stacked up just in the next couple of months. And unless there is an economic catastrophe like Godzilla attacking the world or something, that's really not going to change. You're essentially betting on some kind of massive financial or military or alien invasion strategy to basically get your 20K. And let me tell you, if one of those things happens, if there's, mutant aliens attacking the Earth, or if there's nuclear war, if there's an asteroid heading towards us, then you have much more to worry about than buying your Bitcoin at 20K. Trust me, that is definitely a fact. And the thing is, like, as crazy as it sounds, it actually might be more than 1 trillion, because who's to say those funds aren't going to want to allocate more than 1% if crypto is a brand new asset class. Their interest in this asset class as regulatory, as regulation settles down, might actually increase over what it is right now. So 1 trillion at this might actually be underselling it over the next 10 or 15 years. And let me tell you, 1 trillion over 10 years is 100 billion per year. 100 billion is basically like $300 million of buying pressure inflows per day. And we've seen what kind of increases that actually gets. And even from when the ETF was created, up until today, we haven't quite had $300 million worth of inflows per day on average, because it's been about 2.5 months. $3.5 billion. I mean, like that much money. Basically, like if you have 300 million per day, 1 month would be 10 trillion, and 2.5 months would be 20. I mean, like 1 month would be 10 billion, not 10 trillion, sorry. And 2.5 months would be 25 billion. We only have half of that. So basically, you're looking at 2.5x, even if you just like kind of like averaged over time of each day's inflow as we have right now. And that's just incredible. So I think a lot of people, including myself, might be underestimating how much Bitcoin can rise. And it will drag the rest of the altcoins up with it over the next couple of years. So if you're not in the market soon, you are probably going to be sorry. You're going to be crying that you waited for so long, listening to experts who said Bitcoin's for sure going to go down to 20, 30K and rejoicing every time Bitcoin dumps like 10%, only to miss out on a 500% pump that might be coming soon. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe, hit that bell notifications button. Thank you and have a nice day.